The townhomes are good, first vehicle, I think, for investors to get into, because a lot of it on the outside of the townhome is usually covered by the HOA.
Yeah.
So you don't really have lawn maintenance. You don't really have to worry about roofs, things of that nature. The HOA covers that. Anything on the outside of the building, normally, they cover that.
Right.
You're just responsible for the inside.
This is Lived In, a podcast by Hemby Home Co in association with Haystack Realty Group in Greenville, North Carolina. Lived In exists to host thought-provoking discussions on design and real estate, empowering everyday home dwellers to live beautifully regardless of budget or circumstance. Every 2 weeks, join me, your host Hemby Co, a realtor, design advisor and content manager, as we cover everything from how to effectively conduct a home search to which rooms are worth the investment in your home. Together, let's find out what it really takes to live beautifully. This season, we're hosting interviews with experts, putting the keys in your hand as you make some of the most important decisions that come with creating a beautiful place to live. Today, for our final episode of the season, we're joined by Drew Bennett, a real estate investor. Investing since 2016, Drew has worked hard and smart and seen immense success over the last almost 10 years. If you're looking to go from rookie real estate investor to portfolio owner, this is a conversation you'll want to pay careful attention to. Let's get into it. So, Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for agreeing after a couple months of nagging to be on my podcast.
Very true, very true. I can't deny that, but you're persistent, so.
Drew's a busy guy, so, but I do really appreciate you joining me, and I would love if you would just start by telling everybody about yourself. What do you do?
So I dabble in the real estate realm. The easiest way to put it is I deal with anything having to do with real estate, from construction to investing, to real estate sales as a real estate agent. Pretty much got into this field probably back before I even knew I was getting into real estate, when I was younger. Starting off my dad's a general contractor in New York, so growing up I would always be in the truck with him on the weekends, going to job sites, looking at stuff, carrying around tools, pushing the broom around, so kind of always been part of my life without me even knowing it. And I swore when I went to school, which led me to East Carolina, I got my master's and doctorate here in coastal resource planning, which long story short, it's a planning degree for coastal areas, so a lot of planning, development, is all based on that degree that I have. So kind of still in the housing realm, and then I kind of was like, okay, I want to get into this so I don't have to work and do the physical things that my dad did growing up. And lo and behold, umpteen years later,
Yes.
Kind of in the construction field realm, renovating realm, kind of in a different way. So hopefully I tell my wife that in the next little bit I'm pushing away from the physical labor side of things, but always like to keep busy. It's great. But basically how I got into this realm was I went to school, and then the market kind of crashed in '08. I decided to get my doctorate. By the time I finished, I was kind of overeducated and underexperienced for jobs. So, I was here. The market was great in Greenville. I ended up having a partner at the time. We had invested in a foreclosure property, duplex in the university area. I think we paid like $27,000 for it.
Oh my gosh,
which was unbelievable. It's unbelievable at the time, but even looking back now, at what it's worth, it was boarded up. We were on the roof doing shingle work. We were doing everything. So kind of just went full force into investing without even knowing what I was doing, without even knowing what people commonly refer to the BRRRR strategy.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the BRRRR strategy was.
You're going to have to explain it for everyone later, but keep going.
We'll explain it later. But we were in there, renovating, doing stuff, and I was in my late 20s.
Yes.
Doing this stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Really got the bug, and luckily having the affordability to live in Greenville, I had a low rent, low overhead as costs, and since I was in school, school paid for me to be there, so I didn't have any kind of college loans or anything. So I was in a good opportunity, in a good position, to start diving in, and then slowly houses would come up, things would come up and come in front of my plate, and I would be like, okay, yeah, let's go see if this will work number wise and everything else. I was working 3 jobs. I was working as a professor, working down at the bars, doing various handyman construction stuff.
Yeah.
So trying to just push and keep everything going as much as I could.
Yes.
And then I got lucky with convincing my parents to go in half on a duplex property with me. So they were kind enough to be like, okay, well, we'll go this way with you, put the other half up, and then they trusted me enough. They were like, okay, you go ahead and run with it.
Yeah.
And from there, we've kind of just bought a bunch of properties and built a portfolio, kind of to what it is, and some dumb luck that I've had, which we can talk about later,
Yes.
as well as just kind of understanding, the constraints and how to look at numbers, how to look at things over time. But kind of through the process, I've built some great connections and great relationships with a lot of people, real estate agents, people in the construction industry. You've had a bunch of them on the podcast,
Yes.
probably already, but it's just great community that exists here. And I love, being in Greenville, working in Greenville. Greenville is home, and it will be home for many years, as my wife and I are building our not forever home, but what I call kind of our future home. So, because I think she would like to pull me to the beach eventually.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure.
but we'll see. But anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell,
Your journey.
kind of my journey. So
you've basically been in real estate investing since 2008.
Let's see, since 2016.
Okay, 16.
So better part of a decade, I would say.
Yeah.
I've been involved.
And then when did you get licensed as a realtor?
I got licensed right before COVID.
Okay.
So 2020, I was actually the last person to take a test at the testing center before they closed it.
Oh, wow.
So I finished my courses actually in person.
Yes.
And then I was the last one to take the test in the testing center before they had closed everything down in March.
Yes.
So luckily I passed, and
You were able to
I didn't have to
go
go through any of the craziness that ensued afterwards.
Yes.
But yeah, I've been a realtor since 2020. It's been opened my eyes to a different avenue of real estate. I was always the buyer, to working with an agent, and now being able to be on the flip side of it, working with buyers. It really opens your eyes to kind of all the things that go on behind the scenes that you sometimes don't see.
Yes.
Dealing with the lenders, dealing with the lawyers, dealing with the inspectors,
Yes.
dealing with the other agent, all the personalities that ensue.
Yeah.
And I try to take kind of the things I know as an investor and buyer and kind of help mediate a little bit and find some common ground
Yeah.
as we move forward with deals and stuff like that.
So obviously you began with that one duplex with your partner then.
Yep.
Is there more than one way to be a real estate investor? Is it strictly buying a property and having it as a rental, or are there other ways that people can invest in real estate?
There's a lot of different ways you can do it. I always tell everybody that you need to do what works for yourself. Whether it be the process of house hacking, where you buy your first house, you live in it for a little while, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to keep this as a rental, but move into another house. You can invest in portfolios with other investors. There's avenues of that way. That way you're a little more outside of the day-to-day, having to deal with repair requests, toilets, that kind of thing.
All the things that make
All the
landlords
things
so fun.
Yeah. I had to go check a toilet that wasn't flushing this morning, and I showed up and expecting to have to change out a fill, because that's the type of landlord that I am. I go and fix everything myself because I'm a glutton for punishment sometimes. But I flushed the toilet and it flushed completely fine. So I guess whatever was there,
It's gone.
It's gone now.
It
So
passed.
it passed. So there's different avenues of getting into everything. I suggest everybody before they start investing and get into real estate is really take a look at what are your goals, where do you want to be, and then what type of investor that you want to be. Because everybody's different. Nobody has the same path. No one has the same time allocation. Whether you're a 20-year-old that's just getting started in real estate, or you're someone that's 40 that has a family. Everybody's path is going to be different. but you have to do what you feel is best for yourself and what works for you.
Yeah. And then, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to ask, long-term rentals versus short-term rentals, can you explain the difference for people? Because I think people generally who are not in this world just assume there's one way to do rentals.
Yeah, there's actually I'll add a third.
Okay, go for it.
At the midterm. So traditionally, long-term rental has been the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So long-term rental is you have a house or an apartment or whatever you have, and you rent it out.
Yeah.
They usually sign a year lease, something like that.
Yeah.
Very standard. And they rent it for you for a year.
Mm-hmm.
With the advent of Airbnb, VRBO, all that stuff, vacation rentals
Mm-hmm.
or even short-term rentals, as they're going to call it, have become a major thing of people seeing, okay, yeah, we make a lot of money, having a house at the beach
Yes.
or, having a house in the mountains
Mm-hmm.
and put it on Airbnb. Those are usually shorter stints, like a week or so or less, and fully furnished.
Yeah.
Everything's there. And with that, there's a little more caveat to just having that.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're going to have a management company manage it for you, or you self-manage it yourself.
Yeah.
But then you're dealing with, toilet paper, you're dealing with cleaning, you're dealing with towels, sheets, all that good stuff that ensues with that. So whether you have a cleaner or you do it yourself,
Yeah.
or you have a company that does it all for you, those are a little more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the standard, long-term rental, those are going to be, you kind of almost set it and forget it sometimes.
Yeah.
And they'd contact you if, hey, I have an issue with the HVAC, or I have an issue with the plumbing,
Mm-hmm.
or hey, my grass is long, can you cut it? Normally, those are the things you deal with on your regular standard rental.
Yes.
So it's a little bit, I guess, less work involved, maybe, depending on who it is.
Yeah.
And then the short term usually has a little more steps involved in it. Usually the money, most of the time, is pretty good, depending how you're running your numbers. And then there's a third that I mentioned, which is what I dabble in normally, your longer term rentals, and then what they call midterm rentals.
Okay.
Midterm rentals are for like travel nurses that travel
Mm-hmm.
to fill spots in hospitals.
Yes.
Or you have executive, or it can be called, I think the traditional term was executive rental.
Okay.
So they have like business people that come in and stay for anywhere from a month to 9 months or
Yeah.
longer, but you're providing them a furnished place. And that's where I really have found a good niche with that,
Mm-hmm.
where I can provide them with a furnished rental, but I'm not having to do cleaning every week,
Right.
or as far as the repairs
Mm-hmm.
or everything else that goes along with it, it's a lot less intensive,
Yeah.
but still providing about the same level of service like a traditional Airbnb would be.
Mm-hmm. Which do you think is the most lucrative, or the one that I guess maybe could give you the most return on your investment out of the three?
That's a tough one. It really depends on how you run your numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're putting into the property. So the furnished properties, you're going to have to furnish
Right.
that property. So it all depends on what you're furnishing, how you're furnishing,
Mm-hmm.
how you're doing things with that property. You see some people that'll go in and furnish Airbnbs and spend $40,000.
Yes.
So you got to take all these things into account.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're spending $40,000 on all these furnishings, getting it ready to go. How much money you're going to make in the year?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of balance all those things and know, okay, is this Airbnb going to be a 5-year investment? Is it going to be a 10-year investment? Is it going to be just a year investment?
Right.
So those are all things that when you're looking at doing all these different options,
Mm-hmm.
really take a look and weigh them all out.
Yeah.
Because you may think, oh, I'm going to make $60,000 on this Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
but your overhead and everything else cuts that $60,000 into 30.
Yeah.
When if you just rented that property maybe as a traditional rental,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you'd made $25,000.
Right.
But that $5,000 difference, is that worth all your time, energy, and effort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of, that's why I tell everybody to kind of see where you are and how much energy and effort you want to put into things.
Yes.
Because your time is valuable.
Yeah. So do you also do flipping, or do you really only do rentals?
I used to flip. I flipped a couple properties when I first started off, when the whole Torque El Muso kind of,
Yes.
flip or flop kind of thing
Yes.
was cool. And I got into a couple of properties that were foreclosures, and I flipped a couple and made some money, and was able to kind of reallocate those funds back into actual rentals.
Yes.
Which was nice. But looking back at it now, I should have kept the properties that I flipped.
Yes.
I think the values have doubled on those. So I kind of kicked myself a little bit. I have actually somebody that I know actually had bought my flip property from the person that bought it from me.
Yes.
So I kind of, they'll send me pictures of what happened since they bought it.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to see. It kind of still kicks myself. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have sold that.
I feel like you're not a real estate investor unless you have regrets somewhere along the line.
No, you have regrets, but I think the biggest thing with it is that it's a business at the end of the day. It's not like you're buying a house to live in for yourself. Everything in real estate and real estate investing, you have to look at from the numbers point of view. You can't get your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to think to yourself, okay, where's my exit strategies? Where am I going to hold this? Is this going to be a long-term hold? Is it going to be a short-term hold? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And once you're able to kind of separate out a little bit of the emotion, because you definitely get excited when you find something, you're like, oh yeah, I'm rubbing my hands, I'm ready to go. This is going to be great. It's one of those things where once the numbers work and you do this a little bit of time and you kind of analyze a lot of things, it starts to make sense of what you want, where you want to go with things, and where you want your portfolio to grow and how you want it to grow.
Right. That makes sense. So what's the distribution in your real estate portfolio of long-term versus mid-term, do you think?
I like to stay on the side of still being able to be conservative. I have a lot more traditional rentals than I do midterm.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that I prefer a little bit more security. I try to be risk adverse.
Yes.
I have a 2-year-old at home, so
Yeah.
and a wife that would probably prefer me to be a lot more or less risk adverse. So, like I said, it goes back to where you're at in your journey of life and what you're able to do. I have friends that are a lot younger than me. They have 8 midterm rentals.
Yeah.
And he does fantastic with it. But if they were able to have a slow time, it's a tough go.
Yes.
So I always advise, if you're going to go into your midterm to short-term rental, to make sure that where you're buying it at, your normal regular long-term rental, that rate's going to cover where that short-term or midterm are going to be. So don't overpay for that property.
Right.
Because you don't want to end up being upside down at the end of the day. And I think we're seeing it a little bit more now, where the markets are slowing down and people are starting to get a little bit upside down on the properties, and they're like, oh man, this isn't as great as I thought it was.
Right.
But it's one of those things where they jumped in too fast, didn't look at the numbers, and didn't see where things were going.
Yeah.
So they're just getting caught up in the moment and the emotion sometimes. Like I said, it's a big numbers, analyzing, looking at it, and making sure you're right in the right spot. You don't know everything. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
But you can do your due diligence and make sure that you're in the right spot.
And do you think, because you spoke a bit about the market and shifting, do you think that there are specific market conditions that make it a good time to purchase, let's say, a rental property versus not?
I don't think there is. I think it's opportunistic. I think you have to know where your numbers are going to be.
Yeah.
The rates are going to be what the rates are at that time. But there's always opportunity. If you're buying it correctly, everything works out correctly. If the rates do drop, that's an impact and a factor. You can always go back and refinance. And get a lower rate, or do something instead of having a traditionally, if you have a 15-year mortgage, go for a 30-year mortgage, pull it back out.
Right.
Or there's a lot of options. But if the deal is a good deal, no matter what the rate is, it's going to work.
Right.
So you just have to do that with the faith that, it's nerve-wracking sometimes, especially with the rates that they were in the 7s, high 6s. But I bought 3 properties last year.
Yeah, with rates in the
With
sixes
rates
or
in the
sevens.
6s and 7s.
Wow, yeah.
But knowing what the deals were like,
Mm-hmm.
now that the rates are coming back down, I can go and capitalize
Yeah.
on that appreciation that I've gotten. Plus, the housing market normally, traditionally, knock on wood, it appreciates every year.
Mm-hmm.
It goes up. And depending on what market you're in, we're in a pretty good market here in Greenville.
Yeah.
That we're going to see these things continue. We may not see it like the past 4 years appreciate, but it's going to continue to go up. So no matter if you're buying now or you're buying later, wherever the rates are at, you're still going to be paying a price.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I tell you, if the numbers work, you
go for it.
Go for it.
So, okay. What are, I guess, the real costs of starting a real estate portfolio? So you went in with a friend, partner. It was 20 grand for the property. And you obviously also mentioned you were working 3 jobs, so you were a busy guy. Nothing has changed.
Yeah. Nothing has changed. Just a little bit.
But marriage and kids.
Marriage, kids.
But what are the real costs of kind of starting a real estate portfolio? How do you get the income required to start investing, or what tips would you offer?
I mean, it's hard. Like I said, it's kind of a lifestyle thing of where you're at. I mean, there's different ways to go about starting your portfolio, whether it's like house hacking, whether it's investing in portfolios little by little, or whether it's actually putting your money down for a second home, things like that. It's kind of one of those things where you want to make sure that you're not scraping by to buy that first property and have no money in reserve for the oh no's. Trying to not watch my language here, because you never know what happens. Like your AC could go, your dishwasher could go, your fridge could go. And if you got tenants in place there, you want to make sure that that's taken care of, because that's gonna lose you tenants. And also if you're looking to build your portfolio over time, especially if you're an owner manager, it's gonna impact how they see and they tell other people. I've really strived on that with my rentals that I have, that something needs to be fixed, we go ahead and fix it. And usually I get word of mouth carries a lot. And as far as my rentals go, normally we have no problem filling things because of our reputation that we built over time.
Right, taking care of your tenants and having safe properties. Yeah, that makes sense. Would you, and I know you're not a lender, so I'm asking this just based on, if you were talking to a friend, what would you recommend? Would you ever recommend somebody doing something like a cash out refinance or a home equity line of credit in order to invest in a second property?
I think if the numbers work for them fiscally, and they're in the position where it all works and everything is good, I mean, by all means, go for it. I had a good friend that's been on your show, that I told him he bought a property at a really good price, did a great renovation on it, and looking to buy a second one, more temporary, make that one a rental. I told him cash out refi. And the rates are about the same where he bought it at and where they are now, and he can pull a bunch of money out of the property and go buy a forever home and have a rental property that's going to cash flow really good. I think it's knowing where your numbers are, as far as where that rental is going to be, if it's going to cover that cash out refi, things of that nature. Because you don't want to, I always stress, don't ever want to stretch yourself out too thin.
Right.
Because then you become that, capsize a little bit.
So based on that, what are realistic income goals? What are the numbers or the key indicators that you're looking at when you're evaluating whether a property is worth investing in? I know those feel like 2 different questions, but I feel like they kind of overlap.
I mean, usually mine are very unrealistic.
Why?
Because I get I've started purchasing a lot of properties off market, and also purchasing properties that are in dire need of renovation sometimes. So basically, I'm at a half, whatever my mortgage is. Usually I want to get back as far as rent. So I want to basically double my mortgage. Those are my numbers. That's what makes me feel good at night. That's what makes kind of my portfolio work over time. But everybody can be different. I mean, different markets call for different things.
Yeah.
If you're in a different market where houses appreciate a lot faster than the actual rents increase, it could just be wherever your goal is.
Yeah.
If you want to have, a property, you have a great job maybe, you're, happy at your job, you're making good money, and you just want something that in the future is sort of a place for your money to go as a bank.
Right.
Why not buy a property, have it rented, maybe cover a couple extra $100 a month over your mortgage, over your insurance, over your taxes and stuff, and have that property act as a bank.
Right.
Your tenant's going to keep paying into that property. They're going to be paying your insurance payment. They're going to be paying your principal on that as well. So they're essentially, you may have put the down payment down on that property, but they're essentially, putting money into it every month for you.
Right.
So it's like it's an unrealized kind of gain that you're seeing, that you can take into perspective. And also, tax benefits that come along with that.
Yes.
You have your depreciation on those properties that help offset your taxes.
So you said your numbers are unrealistic because you're basically going for half. So you would say what's a good baseline then? Like you get, a third or I'm trying to think about the numbers, like you get 2/3 is the mortgage and you get to keep a third.
Yeah, I think it depends on the market. I mean, if you're making a couple $100, is it worth it? Because it depends on the property.
Right.
So if you have, a $100,000 2-bedroom shotgun house or apartment or something like that, and you're, charging $1,000 for rent.
Yeah.
Maybe making $200, maybe realistic in that. Opposed to if you have a $400,000,
right,
large 3,500 square foot house that you're renting out for $3,500. Maybe you need to see like $700-800 for that.
Right.
So it's all based on what the investment calls for.
Yeah, and there's 700 or 800 that you're seeing as a profit. That's after everything. So we haven't really talked about property management, but
that's after everything.
Yeah.
So your taxes, your insurance, your mortgage payments if you have any, all that, even maintenance on the property, because things go wrong no matter what. There's issues that pop up that are random. There's stuff that's not so serious, there's stuff that's serious. So it all depends, and those things are, that's the kind of the wild card in investing, are those repairs that you may not see that may wipe out all your earnings for the entire year. So those are things that you have to keep in mind, that sometimes you may not see all that money.
Have you got any horror stories you could share of really expensive things that surprised you out of nowhere?
Yeah, probably to the midterm rental. I had a traveler that was in maybe like 2 months ago. I think it's 2 months ago now. They were in the unit for 6 months. Paid on time, everything was great. I'd gone over a couple times, check on it, normal. Yeah. Nothing wear and tear, but they had I usually allow pets. We're very pet friendly. But they had 2 dogs. They had a 2-year-old. Yeah. And just a lot of just people living in the house in a 800, 900 square foot townhome. So they had moved out, and I go in the day after they move out. Oh gosh. And this, I've never seen dog hair it's like tumbleweeds, like a Western. Oh my gosh. Through the house. They had a yogurt explosion on the ceiling. That was a good one.
Didn't think to clean that one up.
The couch that we had there was thoroughly destroyed. It was a mess. Like you walk in and sound like a horror story sometimes. But they had, the TV was broken downstairs. They ended up having like $1,800 in damages. So luckily, I was able to talk to them and talk it through, and we came to some agreement on everything, which worked out. But sometimes you don't, and you have people that, if you're evicting them, they'll skip out. I had a tenant that I first bought a townhome, and they flooded out the unit on me. Oh my gosh! When I first bought it, I took them to court, and they left the water on, so I had water issues to deal with. So it's always,
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to get into, but those are kind of the extremes of kind of some stories.
Yeah.
But luckily, you keep the line of communication up with your tenants and with people, and you hope that, that $1,700 that was damages, you come to a sort of amicable agreement where everybody's, agreeing and on the at least semi-happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Are you following us on social media? Join us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads for special features, new thoughts on design, and the latest information on the local market.
This is kind of a tangential question, but as a landlord, if you had a tenant and they found out like their job is coming to an end unexpectedly, they're not going to be able to cover it. Besides obviously scrambling to fix it so that they can pay you, is that something you would want to be notified of?
Yeah, I tell my tenants whenever they move in to let me know about it,
Yeah.
what's going on. Whether it's a small repair that needs to be done or situational, I'm always willing to work with them as long as they're willing to let me know what's going on.
Yeah.
We can find a solution.
Yes.
Or some sort of thing that makes it work. It's when you don't tell me what's going on and things aren't communicated.
Yeah.
Like once that line of communication's kind of gone, it
goes downhill.
Yeah, and I try to, as in the investor that type that I am, I try to make sure I touch the property, once a month or once every 2 months.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere around or by. And that's just the type of how I'm wired.
Yes.
Other investors will be, if they want to have investments out of state, anywhere else. I'm not the person really to talk to about that.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of, having stuff where you live, being able to touch and feel it, and being able to make the right repairs and be as proactive with it as possible.
I think that probably is part of your risk aversion too.
Yeah, and that's how I'm wired that way.
Yeah.
So my wife will tell me that I'm crazy. Sometimes I'll take a call at, see a text message come in the middle of the night about a toilet, and then I'll stress over it. But I've gotten better since then. But nonetheless, if there's an emergency or something like that, I do prefer like my tenants to reach out, let me know what's going on, and that way we can get things handled. And they're, essentially a lot of my tenants are college students, so I like to make sure that they're in a safe environment. That way they can, worry about school, because that's what they're here for.
Yeah. Speaking of college students, actually, if you did have a college student, obviously you do. If you did have a college student tenant, are you, in those instances, often using their parents as a guarantor for their rent? How does
normally their parents are the guarantor for that. Or if someone does not meet normally the credit scores,
right?
There's workarounds as far as my personal risk aversion is the parents will sign.
So
or co-signer.
I have questions kind of about how you select tenants, but I also really want to know how you go about looking at property. So obviously numbers are probably the number one criteria when it comes to what you're looking at for a property that you want to use as an investment. But what condition, kind of what guides you as you're making the decision of whether or not this is the house?
I usually prefer things as bad as they possibly could be. Like if you want to give me a house that's to the studs, I'd probably prefer that over something that is completely finished. Just
Why?
because I hate paying top dollar for a property. That's probably just my own thing, because I will grin and grit my teeth about it, because I know being in the construction and real estate investing side of things for so long now, I kind of know where the prices on things are, and my prices normally aren't everybody else's prices, so I kind of would rather put it back the way I want it and know that it's put back by me, so that way it's not some person that has wired, old sheathed fabric wire to new Romex, and then in the wall without a box, and everything just, have an emergency that something's gone wrong.
Right.
I'd rather it be done right the first time, and there's less things you have to avoid instead of having to piece it together. There's nothing wrong with piecing it together, but sometimes I felt that in the long run, it's easier to go ahead and put the larger capital investment into it.
Yeah.
And get it 100% where you want it to be, and then it kind of takes care of itself over time.
So if somebody does not have, a contractor's license and they can't put it back together themselves, would you advise still going for the lowest possible and then working alongside a really good contractor, or would you advise buying it finished and ready to
I think you buy it finished first, and then as you continue on your journey to investing, maybe that is something that if you feel like you want to do something like along those lines, either start educating yourself a little bit about how things work. I always tell everybody, the best thing to do is to learn as much as possible about the properties, so that way you're A, not getting taken advantage of, and B, you kind of know, hey, is this something serious or this is something that's very minimal.
Yeah.
But I always advise, start with what you can do, and then as you progress a little more, you can take the training wheels off.
Yeah.
And then jump into something maybe a little more aggressive, but don't jump into something that a flip property that you have no idea what you're doing. Because if you don't have any idea what you're doing, you may completely blow your numbers out of the water.
Right.
And, be in a position where, you're going to closing and you're $5,000, you're losing $5,000, you're losing money. And that's your money, your time, your energy, everything else. So like I said, it's a big numbers, knowing your numbers, knowing where things are going to be. And I'm always very cautious with it. So I'm very hesitant to jump into things unless I know it's going to work. And I tell everybody to keep looking at your numbers, keep running things in your head.
Yeah.
There's things out there like rent calculators, rehab calculators, all those things. Get those, look at them, see what they have, see what things you're able to put into those. That way you get a better idea of when you're going to analyze something. Knowing your numbers is the key thing. Knowing where you can buy something at.
Yeah. And then you said you like townhomes, so do you really only do those? Do you like doing single family?
I like doing townhomes until recently. I'm starting to slowly move out of townhomes, but that's only because I've acquired multifamily property.
Right.
So the townhomes are a good, first vehicle, I think, for investors to get into, because a lot of it on the outside of the townhome is usually covered by the HOA.
Yeah.
So you don't really have lawn maintenance. You don't really have to worry about roofs, things of that nature. The HOA covers that. Anything on the outside of the building, normally they cover that.
Right.
You're just responsible for the inside. So it's a great vehicle to get into. And it allows you, normally the townhomes here are a little bit, 1980s or newer. So you're getting into townhomes that are, somewhat, they have sheetrock, they don't have plaster walls, nothing crazy, nothing that can't be fixed.
Right.
So they're a little bit better, and then you're also looking at lower insurance on the property most of the time. You see the HOA will cover sometimes the outside, common insurance outside. So your overall costs, other than your monthly HOA fee, covers a lot of things for you. I think it's a good investment as long as you're knowing where the numbers are, where you're buying things. And for me, I'm moving out of my townhomes because I've seen an appreciation rate over the past 4 years where it's been great. I don't think I'm going to see it again. And for me, I'm trying to kind of downsize, but not downsize my portfolio a little bit, simplify and simplify and reallocate it a little bit. So that's kind of my reasoning for kind of moving away from those.
Go ahead.
They're great. I mean,
just you've got.
It's a situational thing. Like I said, it's kind of where you're at a point in life.
Yeah. With ones that have rentals that have an HOA, are you typically paying that, or is the tenant paying that?
You pay the HOA normally.
Okay.
You can write it somewhere where the tenant will pay it, but you don't want to get into that murky water where the tenant doesn't pay it, then the HOA comes knocking on your door saying, "Hey, we're going to foreclose on you because you didn't pay your payments."
Which, if you didn't know, an HOA can foreclose on you. It's a fun detail.
Yeah. We do that paperwork a good bit. I'm on one of the HOA boards, and every month there's always somebody that is in lieu, and we have to go to the lawyers and stuff like that. So it's a fun time. Yeah.
When should somebody walk away? When is it not a good idea? What kind of property, or I guess maybe even area, would you say maybe you don't do that, walk away?
I don't think it's necessarily an area.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I think it's really understanding where your numbers are.
Yeah.
What you have to put into the property, or not put into the property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where, understanding the area that it's in, maybe where the appreciation is going to go in the area.
Yeah.
If you see it trending up, if not, it's kind of really doing your research and understanding kind of the numbers, the area, the whole holistic view of where that property is at.
Yeah. Do you think understanding demographics helps? So, for example, obviously we're here in Greenville, we have a large student population. Understanding that helps you to leverage, and understanding kind of their living practices, where people are living, kind of helps to inform how you make that decision, or not really?
I think it's a good thing to look at. Normally, I don't think it's an end-all be-all of things. I think that looking at the demographic side of, we have a large hospital system here, large university system here.
Yeah.
Those two things normally don't necessarily, knock on wood, fail.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at the other industries that we have here.
Right.
Your pharmaceutical, your manufacturing, all things that are, newsworthy in the uptick.
Yeah.
I think my wife's gonna kill me if I get these numbers wrong, but I think it's like $1.4 billion is gonna be invested into Greenville in the next little bit here.
Yeah.
And those are all high skilled,
Yeah.
well-paying jobs.
Right.
So not only are we gonna see that impact in the real estate market, as far as homes being bought,
Yeah.
and house prices, we're going to see it in the rental market as well.
Right.
Because some people may come here for a couple of years and say, I really don't want to buy, but I'm going to rent. So they're going to look for rentals, which is going to, bring people that are being paid well into the rental market here.
Right. Which is a huge advantage for realtors too.
Yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate here. I'll say that.
When you own a rental and you're kind of thinking, okay, it's time for me to back out, what's a good exit strategy? Or I guess before you get to that point, how can you plan effectively and have good exit strategies?
Man, that's a tough one because I really don't. I kind of just do it based on what comes up, because you never know, as far as the real estate goes, what deal may come up or what opportunity you may have, or what life situation will come up.
Right.
As far as an exit strategy, but I think knowing where you sit on the property, knowing where your numbers are at, and knowing, kind of what your ultimate end goal is. I think that's where you figure out where your exit strategy is on a property.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're losing money and you're, flailing and you're just like, I just need to cut the cord, that's, one thing. But if you're, you have a property, it steadily makes you money, but you've appreciated a ton, it may be a time to, do that. And if you think like, oh, well, I have this other opportunity to do this, well, maybe you take that property, do 1031 exchange on it, which is tax free, and allocate to that other property that maybe make you more money over time. So it's understanding the deals and understanding how things flow in the market.
Yeah.
Like I'm selling a townhouse, and hopefully it'll close before this is posted. And I'm going to 1031 exchange, tax-free exchange it, some of the proceeds into a duplex that I have under contract off market. So that duplex fits my model of where I have properties. Yeah. The townhouse was a great investment for me. I've made, a good profit on it. And now I'm turning it into a duplex in my desired area where I have a higher concentration of properties. Right. And also being able to take some of that money from the proceeds and put it towards the future home that I'm building. So that's another reason too. Yeah. So it's very situational, and knowing your numbers, and knowing, kind of tell everybody to look at your goal when you start and work backwards from that. Yeah. How do you get to that end goal? And some people maybe just, I want 5 properties and I want them to be paid off by the time I retire. Or somebody maybe I might want to be a real estate mogul. Right. So just need to figure out how to get to that end point from where you're starting at. Yeah.
Do you think, because it kind of sounds like you're saying when it's good is probably the best time? Like when you're like, I'm in a good spot, there's another opportunity for me to kind of reallocate the funds here, that's when you should jump, versus waiting until things are really bad and then selling. Does that kind of sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all situational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they're good, they're good. When
Yeah.
they're bad, they're bad. But you always want to just know where you're at in the property.
Mm-hmm.
Know where you can get out at the property if there's a good exit.
Yeah.
And if you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, you know, go ahead and move forward from it. You can't let your emotions kind of get the best of you on some of this stuff. And say, oh, I'm going to hold out. If it's not working, it might be time to say see you later and, you know, part ways, because it could, you know, impact you, you know, down the line.
All right, I've got 2 more questions and then I will free you. The first one is, because you've mentioned off-market deals twice now, what is the best place, if you're just a layperson listening to this and you're like, okay, where do I even begin to find off-market properties? What advice would you give them?
I think it's putting your face in front of a lot of people, and getting to the networks and knowing, you know, who has stuff and who doesn't, and just being kind of persistent and, you know, showing your face a little bit. I mean, I think this off-market deal that I'm doing right now, I'm on HOA board with this person, and I kind of met them through that, and I built a kind of relationship over time, and I kind of put a little bug in his ear, hey, you know, if you ever want to sell these, let me know. And, you know, not pressuring, not, you know, forcing, not sending mailers to people.
Right.
You can do that too. There's nothing against that one bit, but just showing people you have a genuine interest in the property, if they ever wanted to sell it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it works. I've been contacted online through my website.
Oh, wow.
SEO searches to buy properties. One of them was my neighbor that I bought a property from, which I just flipped to another institution that was very good. I talked to my neighbor. I was like, hey, you know, I'm interested in this property. I'd love to have it. They sold it to me. And I also he had another property in Greenville, which I sold for him. I listed it for him, so it was kind of a double deal. But, you know, it was just making the connections, talking to people that, you know, may know other people that have stuff, and just keeping everybody in mind of like, hey, if you ever have anything, you know, please run it across, you know, for me. And that's kind of how a lot of the easiest off-market deals kind of have worked for me. I feel like a lot of the wholesaling opportunities and processes, it just rubs people the wrong way sometimes. And I try not to be kind of forceful. But anybody listening, if you have anything you want to sell it, let me know. Shameless plug here, but I'd be interested in taking a look, or at least advising what is needed. But,
Okay, final question. So someone's listened to this, they're like, okay, all of this sounds great, I want to get started. First steps, what are the first things they should do to begin?
Check where your bank account's at. Then start reading about investing.
Specific literature you want to recommend?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Always a great one. There's also another book called The Burr Strategy.
Okay, yeah.
I don't recommend it, but it's a good learning tool to understand how the mechanics of real estate and real estate investing work. Burring is tricky, depending on where the interest rates are and the numbers work. But again, if the numbers work, then they're great. I think those two for right now are two of the better books to look at. And then any kind of self-help or self-improvement books, I feel are very parallel, because a lot of the real estate investing is very mental. It can be ups and downs, right turns, left turns, all the time, and kind of knowing how to balance those and figure those out. You always have to have your head on kind of a swivel, and be able to kind of multitask and figure out 3 steps ahead of where you're at. Is always a good thing to have, and learning those later in my life, I found those to be very beneficial to my growth in the business and my growth as my personal growth. We did not cover property management in this episode, and it's like a point of not contention,
pain point is what I would say for Drew, because he works with some of our property management at Haystack. But I would also just recommend, as a kind of throwaway, look into that, because it can save you a lot of discomfort. Drew does a lot of his own property management, so he's not.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the property management route, it's a way to alleviate those phone calls on a Saturday or Sunday in the middle of the night of my toilet is overflowing,
Yes.
or I lost power, or something crazy that you just don't want to deal with when you're with your family. And I would encourage, if you do want to go that route of property management, to look into the companies, look at their ratings, see if you know anybody that has dealt with them before, do your due diligence with them, and see what they offer as far as what their rates are. And sometimes the cheapest one is not the best one to go with, so just plugging that. But yeah, that's a good way to go if you don't want to honestly be physically there and be present.
Yeah.
And alleviate a lot of stress.
Yes. So, well, thanks, Drew. I love this episode. Super fascinating, interesting, educational. So,
well, thanks for having me. Appreciate
I'm sure
it.
that everybody will appreciate it.
Well, friends, that's it for season 3. Thank you so much for joining me. If there are any episodes that you missed, make sure to check out the show notes where I've linked to every single episode this season. I'll be back in a few weeks with season 4. So take care, and I'll see you then.